The honourable member from Bay of Quinte.
Mr. Speaker, after 9 years, costs are up, taxes are up, crime is up, time is up, and now tariffs are up. The U.S. softwood lumber tariffs have just doubled. And what does this Prime Minister do? Does he make trade headlines? No, he's not making headlines, he's making punchlines on late-night TV where he called the softwood lumber issue a small issue that matters. A small issue that matters, Mr. Speaker. It's 400,000 jobs. When is this Prime Minister going to figure out that he's the punchline and that it's time for a Prime Minister who will make this a large issue that matters for all Canadians, their jobs and their paychecks?
The Honourable Minister for International Trade.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm really glad that the member opposite yesterday saw the Prime Minister's appearance on Stephen Colbert, because especially since we know that they get their news from Tucker Carlson. Yep. Canadians who watched last night's interview will know what all Canadians know, that this government stands up for our workers. We stand up for our forestry sector. We will continue to do this work for Canadians and for our workers. The forestry sector contributes enormous jobs to this country, and we will keep doing that work.
The honourable member from Bay of Quinte.
Well, Mr. Speaker, lame excuses are also up. The last Prime Minister solved the softwood lumber deal in 80 days. It's been 9 years. And you know why? The last Prime Minister didn't back down. This Prime Minister backs down to Biden, to Obama, to Trump, and the result has been increased unemployment and the risk of another 400,000 jobs in the forestry sector. When this Prime Minister said Canada's back, he meant backed down. Right. Isn't it time for our Prime Minister who will stand up to Canadians once again?
The Honourable Minister for International Trade and Export Development.
Mr. Speaker, when it comes to securing trade deals, we're not going to take any lessons from the Conservatives on this. The Conservative Party wants us to ignore the environment. They want us to ignore workers. They want us to sign bad trade deals. You'll remember that in this House that they wanted us to capitulate on CUSMA. We didn't do that. They cheered on Brexit. We didn't do that. And they abandoned Ukrainians when they needed the most and when we negotiate free trade agreements. On this side of the House, we negotiate good deals, not just any deals, and we won't capitulate. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from South Shore St. Margaret's is a person who has been on the Hill for a long time. I please ask for his indulgence.
It's clear.
From Dufferin-Caledon.
After 9 years of NDP Liberals, taxes are up, costs are up, crime's up, and time's up. Last night, the Prime Minister appeared on The Late Show to pathetically explain why he keeps backing down to American presidents on softwood lumber. He called his failure on softwood lumber a small issue. Meanwhile, tens of thousands of forestry workers have lost their jobs. It's an insult to them. After 9 years of repeatedly backing down to each and every president on softwood lumber, how can Canadians believe they'll ever get a deal to lift these punishing tariffs?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, our government has stood up to Trump and our government has stood up to Putin. Meanwhile, when Putin told the Conservatives to vote against the free trade deal with Ukraine, they said, okay, fine. And when Trump threatened Canada with 232 tariffs against steel and aluminum, we stood up to the U.S. You know what the Conservatives said? They said that was dumb, and they told us to back down. We did not. We will never back down to bullies. We will always stand up for Canadians.
The honourable member from Dufferin-Caledon.
It's pathetic. That from the government that allowed detonators, Canadian detonators, to end up in Russian landmines that blew up Ukrainian troops. They're a disgrace. They've backed down to Trump on softwood. They backed down from Obama on softwood. They backed down to Biden on softwood. And after 9 years of complete and total failure, tens of thousands of forestry workers have lost their jobs. She didn't even address it. And her Prime Minister insulted them by saying it's a small issue. We know this arrogant Prime Minister won't apologize to the forestry workers, so will they let him judge him in a carbon tax election?
Once again, members, I invite them to be very prudent and judicious in their choice of words. The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, when our country faced an existential economic challenge, the threat that our free trade agreement with the United States would be torn up, our government stood up to the U.S. and the Conservatives ran scared. They told us to back down. When the U.S. imposed illegal 232 tariffs on our steel and aluminum, we stood up for Canadians. We imposed countervailing tariffs. The Conservatives told us to back down. Canadians remember that. We will never back down. We stand up for.
The Honourable Member from Prince Albert.
When it comes to defending jobs, we would never tell anybody to back down. Only this Prime Minister does that. After 9 years of this NDP Liberal government, taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, their time is up. Last night, the Prime Minister told Stephen Colbert that his failure to negotiate a deal on softwood lumber and fisheries was a small issue. Unbelievable. Seriously, there's been over $9 billion that Canadian companies have paid to the U.S. in tariffs. There's 800,000 direct and indirect jobs on the line. The forestry sector is in a crisis. Yet this Prime Minister has backed down time and time again to 3 different presidents. Why does this Prime Minister show much disdain to Canadian?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Mr. Speaker, there's only one party in this House that shows disdain to Canadian workers, and it's the Conservative
That's
Party
right.
of Canada. Time and time again, when our country has had to negotiate trade deals, this government has stood for Canadians. We renegotiated NAFTA. We stood up against the U.S. steel and aluminum tariffs, and we will continue to stand up for Canadian workers in all sectors, including the forestry sector. But, Mr. Speaker, what is up is time for them to stop playing political games and to get down to the serious business of governing this country. That's what Canadians expect. It's time for them to grow up.
Yeah, very good.
The Honourable Member from Prince George, Peace River, Northern Rockies.
After 9 years of the NDP Liberals, taxes are up, costs are up, crime's up, and their time is up. The Prime Minister was on a U.S. talk show last night and dismissed his failures on softwood lumber as a small issue. This, weeks after the U.S. slapped Canada with a 14.5% tariff on softwood lumber. Since then, 2 more BC mills have closed, putting 500 more workers out of a job. Do the NDP Liberals really think mills closing and losing thousands of forestry jobs is just a small issue?
The Honourable Minister for International Trade and Export Promotion.
Let me begin by thanking the softwood lumber industry and their workers for the tremendous contribution they make to the Canadian economy. You heard the Prime Minister say this. We are talking about this. This long-term dispute doesn't help anybody, and it particularly doesn't help us build affordable homes. On this side of the House, we're really proud that we are tackling housing. We are building affordable homes, and if we are to solve this issue, it'll make housing affordability better in the United States and certainly better here in Canada. Thank you very much.